Her. I remember her. The first time I laid eyes on her. She knocked at the wooden door. I knew it wasn't an adult knocking. I just know these things. The sound was light, timid, and just a bit too low on the door to belong to someone grown. I walked across my living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and unlocked the door. As I pulled it open, the hinges groaned softly, and there she was, standing on my porch, waiting for me. She came to me, and I knew it was her. I knew right away she was the one I'd been waiting for. I felt it. It's hard to put into words, but if I had to, it was like being struck by lightning in the pit of my stomach, a surge of electric energy coursing through me and ending in a sharp, tingling burst at the base of my skull. She was tiny, small even for her age, and her presence seemed to shrink further under the weight of the gray autumn sky. Her long blonde hair framed her round cheeks, dampened slightly by the drizzle that had been falling all afternoon. Her light blue eyes, startling in their clarity, reflected the dull brown of my front door, as if they were trying to absorb everything around her. She smiled then, just a flicker of a smile, timid, shy. It might have been imperceptible to someone else, but I saw it. I knew it was there. "Hi," she said, her voice barely louder than the wind rustling through the bare trees. I crouched to her level, studying her face as if I might find answers etched in the softness of her features. "Hello," I replied, the word catching in my throat. Her small hands clutched a green box close to her chest, a makeshift tray hanging from her neck with an assortment of colorful packages. "I'm from Troop 195 of the Girl Scouts," she said, her voice steadier now, though still carrying a gentle, unpracticed rhythm. "I'm selling cookies to finance our trip to Washington next year. Would you like to help?" I blinked, her words pulling me from the strange fog that had overtaken me since I first saw her. "I'd love to help," I said, forcing a smile. "What exactly are you selling?" She brightened, her confidence growing with every word. "I have caramel chocolate chip, do-si-dos, lemon-ups, and thin mints." I nodded slowly, leaning one arm on the door frame. "Those all sound delicious." And they did, each one of them. I wasn't lying. I'm not a liar. I've always tried to tell the truth, to open up to anyone who showed even the slightest interest in, well, in me. It's rare enough that someone does. "Which ones would you suggest?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The do-si-dos are the most popular," she replied, a practiced response, one she'd probably used at every house she'd visited. I tilted my head. "Are those your favorite?" Her expression softened, her small fingers playing with the corner of a box in her tray. "No, I like the Girl Scouts s'mores. But," she hesitated, her eyes meeting mine, "we're all out of those." She seemed genuinely saddened by that. and I could see it in her eyes. That's something I've always been able to do. Read people, see the emotions they hide behind words and smiles. It's a sensitivity I've had since I was a boy, and it hasn't faded with time. How about this? I said, my voice lowering, like I was sharing a secret. Give me 2 boxes of do-si-dos now, and when you get more Girl Scout s'mores, I want you to come back here and bring me 10 boxes of those. Her face lit up, her smile blooming into something real and full. It wasn't timid anymore. It was happy, proud. She looked like she'd just conquered a mountain, a small victory in a world that often feels insurmountable at her age. Really? She asked, her voice rising with excitement. Really? I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the cash. I handed it to her. She reached for it, her movements unhurried. And as she did, I let 3 of my fingers graze the back of her small hand. It was a fleeting touch, imperceptible to her, or at least I thought it was. But I noticed. I noticed how her skin quivered ever so slightly under my fingertips, like the faintest ripple in still water. She quickly pulled the money back, her attention shifting as she counted it with practiced efficiency. Then, tucking the bills into the small pouch at her side, she handed me the 2 boxes with both hands. She held them out as though they were treasures, precious and fragile, the way a child often treats even the simplest things. Thank you so much, she said, her voice louder now, the earlier shyness melting away. I'm happy to help, I replied, meaning it. She turned to leave, clutching her tray of cookies like a prize. At the edge of the porch, she paused and looked back at me, her eyes wide and sparkling with gratitude. I promise I'll come back when we get more s'mores. I'll be waiting, I said, watching as she skipped down the driveway, her small frame disappearing into the gray drizzle. I stood there for a moment, holding the boxes of cookies in my hands, feeling a strange warmth that wasn't entirely explainable. It wasn't about the cookies or the sale. It was about the way her smile had lit up the gray, how her small victory had momentarily lifted inside me. I closed the door and set the boxes on the counter. For a long time, I just stared at them, my mind replaying the exchange. Something about it had settled deeply in me, a seed waiting to grow, but her room wasn't ready. I needed to get it ready for her, to make it perfect, comfortable, a place where she could grow strong and healthy and happy. She deserved that, so I worked at it tirelessly, transforming the cold, gray basement into a beautiful sanctuary. The walls, once lifeless and bare, were painted a soft, light pink, the kind of color that whispered warmth and innocence. A bed, with a quilted blanket, sat in the corner, flanked by a small table with a lamp shaped like a butterfly. I built a shelf, filling it with hundreds of children's books, toys, and dolls. Every detail mattered. A camera sat discreetly in the top corner of the room, its lens fixed on the space where she would sleep and play. It wasn't about control. It was about safety. I added a lock to the heavy wooden door, one that could only be opened from the outside. It wasn't to trap her, no. It was to keep the world out, to ensure nothing could hurt her. The best part, though, was the shopping. I spent hours picking out clothes for her, envisioning her wearing them, imagining how she'd look. I chose soft fabrics in bright, cheerful colors, clothes she could wear now, and some she'd grow into over time. Each piece felt like a step closer to her, to making her mine, and then I waited. I waited for her to come back. Days turned into weeks, and still I waited. The 2 binders of cookies sat on the counter, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to open them. Instead, I would trace my fingers along their edges, touching the cardboard like I had touched her hand. Sometimes, I'd lift one to my face, inhaling the faint mix of packaging and something else, something peculiar and fleeting. The smell of her, the anticipation was unbearable. A constant hum under my skin. Each creak of the floorboards, each knock at the door, sent my heart racing, hoping it would be her. But she didn't come back, not yet. I knew she would, though. She had to. I'd made everything perfect. And then, one day, her knock came. It wasn't just any knock. It was her knock. I knew it instantly, even before my body moved to rise from the couch. I felt it in my chest, in my veins. A spark of anticipation coursing through me. The moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I'd been preparing for, was here. The chance to see her again, to look into her bright eyes, to show her what I had built for her, because of her. Because she was the one. It was her. I crossed the room in a few quick strides, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. There she stood, with that smile. It wasn't as shy as before, more certain now, like she knew she was welcome, like she belonged here. In her hands, she held a neat stack of cookie boxes, her reason for coming back. Or so she thought. I smiled at her, a warmth creeping into my voice that I couldn't mask. "It's good to see you again," I said. She beamed, her cheeks flushed from the cool air. "I have your cookies, and since it's such a big order, I added a pack of lemon ups for free." "Well, now that's very kind of you," I replied, my tone light and friendly. I slipped my hands into my pockets, pretending to search for the cash. My fingers met empty fabric, as I knew they would. I hadn't carried any money in weeks. The truth was, I didn't want to hand her the money here on the porch. Not this time. I needed her to come inside. I looked up at her, feigning a small chuckle. "Looks like I forgot my wallet. It's inside, in the kitchen," I said, gesturing behind me. It wasn't a lie. I don't lie. I never lie. My wallet was in the kitchen, sitting right on the counter, next to the untouched cookie boxes from her first visit. The ones I had been saving for this moment. Her smile didn't falter. She nodded, clutching the boxes tighter. "Oh, that's okay," she said, ever the accommodating Girl Scout. "Why don't you come in?" I asked, stepping aside and motioning to the warmth of the house behind me. "It's cold out there, and you've been walking all afternoon, haven't you?" She hesitated for a moment, her gaze flicking to the open door, the inviting glow of the living room beyond. Then she smiled again, this time with a hint of excitement, like this was just another part of her adventure. "Okay," she said, stepping inside. I closed the door behind her, the sound of the latch clicking into place, sending a thrill through me. It wasn't loud, but to me, it echoed. I turned to her, my smile steady, my heart pounding. "Make yourself at home," I said, my voice calm and even. "Let me grab that money for you." She nodded, her eyes wandering around the room, her curiosity as innocent as ever. She was perfect. Perfect. And she was finally here. Oh, do I remember her? The way her muffled cries felt against my left hand as I pressed it over her mouth, lifting her from the ground with my right arm. She bit down hard and kicked wildly, her small shoes landing against my legs, but I barely felt it. I told myself it was normal. She didn't understand. Not yet. She couldn't comprehend what I had done for her, what I had built, the sacrifices I had made. Not yet. Her body thrashed against mine as I carried her, her weight so light it felt like she might vanish. But she wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. I took her down the stairs, each step an echo in the stillness of the house, and through the door. Not a room. Not just any room. Her room. This was the place I had prepared for her. The place where she would grow, where she would finally be safe, where I could ensure nothing and no one could hurt her. I would see to that. Only me. I would witness every moment, every milestone. She would know, in time, how much I cared, how much I loved her. I threw her onto the bed, her small frame bouncing once before she scrambled back, pressing herself against the pink walls I had painted just for her. She screamed, her voice raw and high, tears streaming down her red face. "Please, let me go. Please," she begged, her words garbled through sobs, her tiny hands clawing at the quilted blanket I had chosen with such care. But I knew it would pass. It always passed. The crying, the yelling, the fear, it would all melt away after a few weeks. It always did. She just needed time to see. Time to realize that this wasn't what she thought it was. This was better. "It's okay," I said, my voice steady, calm, trying to cut through her cries. "You'll understand soon. I promise." Her tears only fell faster, and her words dissolved into incoherent sobbing. I watched her for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but not from regret or hesitation. It was from the sheer anticipation of what was to come. This was just the beginning, and like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. But they didn't understand that. They didn't understand anything. They took her away from me just 3 days after she got here. 3 days. That's all the time we had. They stormed in like animals, breaking through the front and back doors, screaming, their boots pounding on the floors. I had walked in peace for years. And the guns. Oh, the guns. Pointed at me. At me. Me, who had kept her safe. Me, who had given her a sanctuary. A place where she could be loved, cared for, where she could grow without fear. They didn't see the love in my eyes, the care in my hands, the way I had worked so hard to make her life perfect. They only saw their own distorted version of the story, their judgment cutting through my truth. They didn't understand. Oh, I remember her. I've remembered her every single day for the past 24 years, 364 days, and 6 hours. I know because I've counted. I've counted every second, every breath, every heartbeat that has passed since the moment they tore her from me. But now, just a few more days, just a little more time, and we will be reunited. Finally, I've waited for this. I've prepared for it because, like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. The painter of souls. It was the first time in 2 years that the group of friends had reunited for this trip. After many cancellations and unfinished plans, everyone had made an effort to make this outing a reality. They hadn't spoken much during the funeral 2 years ago, and it almost seemed as if their friendship would dissolve soon after. But through the video game chats they frequented, nostalgia and good memories rekindled the bonds that had weakened with the loss. They talked about how competitive Bennett had been in many of the games they played, how he would ask for rematches multiple times, failure after failure. They spoke about how he would have wanted them to spend time remembering him, just like this, with laughter and anecdotes. The 3 of them went from contacting each other through video game chats to messaging on their phones and making video calls. We should go on the trip, Arlo had suggested one day. During one of their group calls, there was a long silence before Thiago said, "Do you mean?" "Yes," Arlo confirmed. The travel plan Bennett shared days before. "Before what happened? Are you sure?" Roman asked. It was his idea, and he was the most excited about it. We never understood what had motivated him so much to organize this trip. "He wanted us to meet someone," Arlo said. "That's the only thing I remember." "Someone in the middle of the rainforest?" Thiago inquired. "Well, it was also a sightseeing trip around the city, and a chance to visit many of the famous archaeological exhibitions in the area. The museums, too," added Arlo, who had, in fact, graduated in art history. "And what about the person you said he wanted to find?" Roman asked. "I suppose we don't have enough information to look into that," Arlo observed. "That's why I suggest we take the trip in his honor and try to enjoy it as the four of us would have. You know?" "That's not a bad idea," Thiago said, encouraged. "I could use a holiday. I need to get out of here. An excuse to take a break from my business." "And when was the last time we traveled together?" Roman added. "Let's do it." Just like that, the three of them made their preparations for the trip on the following weeks. They looked up information about their destination and its tourist attractions, paid for their plane tickets, and agreed to meet at the airport 2 hours before the flight. On his way to the airport, Arlo had decided to stop by Bennett's house. He knocked on the door, and it was Bennett's mother who answered. The woman looked at him in surprise, but she immediately moved to hug him once she recognized him. "My goodness, Arlo, it's been so long. I wasn't expecting to see you after the funeral. Come in, come in." She invited him inside. They entered the living room, where photos of Bennett with his siblings and parents filled every corner of the room. Arlo avoided looking at them as his mother offered him a seat. "No, thank you." He smiled politely. "I was just passing by to let you know that I'm going on a trip. Actually, the three of us are going. It's a plan Bennett shared with us before he left." The woman nodded, perfectly understanding what he meant. "Yes, the trip." He wouldn't stop talking about it. "I'm so glad the three of you have decided to go. Bennett would be so happy to know this." "I know," Arlo sighed. "I know we haven't spoken to you since the funeral. We tried to reach out, but it was very difficult." "I understand, Arlo," she said, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "I just wanted to stop by to tell you about our plans in person, and also to see his room one last time. I hope that's not too intrusive a request. I just needed to see the last space he was in." The woman nodded again, understandingly. "It's not intrusive at all. Go ahead, you can go in. To be honest, it's a relief to have someone else in that room, even if only for a few minutes. My husband and I are starting to feel the deep silence coming from it." His mother remained in the living room, while Arlo climbed the stairs to the room. He opened the door, and immediately, the unmistakable scent of Bennett's deodorant reached his nostrils. mixed with the smell of a closed-up room and the dust floating from the shelves. Most of his belongings and clothes were packed away in boxes that the family would donate to charity, but the posters and printed images on the walls had not yet been taken down. Arlo stepped closer to observe them carefully. Bennett used to draw a lot in his spare time. Despite having graduated in computer science and cybersecurity, his true passion had been drawing and sketching, something he had dedicated himself to in his free time, both inside and outside of university. On the wall were drawings that seemed to depict them, the group of friends, peculiarly colored in primary colors. In some drawings, Roman and Thiago were shaded in pink tones. In others, a slightly more purple hue. Bennett himself was shaded in gray. Arlo was always painted in red. Arlo gazed at the drawings with resentment, holding back the urge to tear the paper from the wall. During the first 2 days at their destination, the 3 friends spent their time at the 4-star hotel they had booked. When Arlo suggested going to the city center to explore, the other 2 sighed in annoyance. "We have a week and a half to explore whatever you want," said Thiago, still wrapped in his sheets. "We won't have the chance to enjoy this level of luxury once these holidays are over. You're the one finishing a PhD in history and art, Arlo. You can go without us," added Roman as he put on his swimming trunks, getting ready to head to the pool. Arlo irritably reminded them, "This trip is for Bennett. You know he would have wanted to see the exhibitions and museums. You've been saying that for weeks," Roman retorted, turning to face him. "What's with the sudden interest in what he wanted to explore? If I remember correctly, you always ignored all the drawings and paintings he tried to share with us." Now Thiago sat up on the bed, watching his friends as they confronted each other. "What's gotten into you, Roman?" Arlo asked. "I don't know. Why are you making us feel like you're the one who cares the most about his death and his final wishes? We mourn his loss too. Don't try to act like you're above us with your false moral code." Arlo simply pulled a small, crumpled note from his pocket and shoved it in Roman's face. This is the place he wanted to visit, along with the name of the person he wanted to see. Roman snatched the paper to read it himself. Thiago got up to take a look as well and asked, "Was this what you went to get from his house?" Avoiding the question, Arlo said, "I'm not trying to impose some false moral code on you. It's normal to feel guilt, but the best thing we can do is show a bit of interest in what he loved. That's all I'm trying to do." With that, he left the room. Thiago and Roman exchanged uneasy glances. "I have no idea what's going through his head," said Roman. Thiago shrugged, though his expression remained troubled. "You heard what he said. It's normal to feel guilt. I'm sure he's going through the same thing." An hour later, the 3 of them made their way into the city, stopping by the tourist spots they had planned in advance. This time, however, the excitement they had initially felt for the trip was gone. A sense of impending doom loomed over them, and there was nothing they could do to dispel it. All of a sudden, what had been a journey in memory of their friend was being exposed as the farce they had tried to mask with that ridiculous excuse. The last place left to visit was the shop. It was an art shop. From the outside, it had that vintage aesthetic that attracted art lovers looking for something unique and different, something timeless, stuck in time. The three entered cautiously. The shop was empty, and the light streaming through the glass windows fell upon the golden and bronze frames of the various paintings hanging and stacked everywhere. All the paintings depicted people, some in groups, others alone. At first glance, they seemed like photographs, edited in different colors, but upon closer inspection, one could appreciate the hand-drawn strokes and the pigment of watercolors and oil paint. The style of these paintings looks familiar, Thiago murmured. Without much enthusiasm, Roman nodded. Yeah, this is exactly how Bennett used to draw. The characters in the paintings were painted monochromatically. Each person in each painting had a certain tone of color assigned to them. Some colors were more intense than others. Background characters in landscapes or scenes were usually depicted in different shades of gray. In portraits, many were also colored in gray. The three had been so absorbed in the artwork that they hadn't noticed the man who had approached them to greet them. "Greetings," he said. The group startled and turned their attention to him. The shop owner wasn't as old as they had expected. He was likely in his mid-30s. He dressed just like one of them, except for the paint-stained apron he wore. His eyes were a peculiar silver color that stood out in the dim light of the shop. "We're looking for Keita," Arlo stated. "That's me," the man confirmed, pointing to himself. His strong West African accent was evident in his words. "I've been expecting you." Did Bennett talk to you about us?" Thiago stammered. With a rather calm demeanor, Keita tilted his head as if the answer was somewhat complicated. "He spoke to me about you the first time he came here. But that was also the last time I ever saw him," he said, turning to search through a stack of paintings behind him. Carefully, he pulled one out. "Exactly 2 years ago. This is what I painted." Keita placed the painting in front of them. Roman paled at the sight of it. Thiago still couldn't understand, and Arlo remained silent, pressing his lips together. The painting was a reproduction of a real photo. The four of them had taken 3 years ago on a road trip to the mountains. The picture had been taken with a camera set on a tripod. However, in this painting, only Arlo, Roman, and Thiago smiled at the camera, standing in front of a rocky landscape with waterfalls cascading into a lake. Bennett appeared as a gray shadow in the background, at the edge of the lake, a few meters away from them. Beside him, another gray figure crouched at Bennett's feet, as if crying. It looked like the figure of a woman. In the painting, Arlo was colored in a deep red, while Thiago and Roman were shades of maroon. "Where did you get this from?" Arlo demanded. "From the truth," Keita answered. "You guys remember exactly what happened that day, don't you?" No one answered. The silence itself was confirmation. "I can see the color of your souls from miles and miles away," the artist continued. "I don't need to know you to start painting what each of you inspires in me." His tone became more accusatory as he went on. "Bennett had this gift too. He came to me because he wanted to learn more about it. And you, Arlo, you knew that." Roman turned to Arlo, stunned by such information. "Yet you made him self-medicate with drugs so he would lose his mind and end up taking his own life," Keita continued. "I didn't want Bennett to die," Arlo protested, raising his voice. For the first time in years, he seemed to be losing his composure. "I just wanted him to forget and stop painting those damn drawings. He was going to get us in trouble." "You wanted him to forget her?" Keita asked. He walked over to his desk and picked up some drawings, this time on notebook paper, traced by a different hand. "Bennett gave me these during his last visit." Thiago held them in his hands. Upon seeing the frantic sketches of a cadaverous woman in black, gray, and green colors, he gasped, "My God!" and let the sheets fall to the floor in shock. No one bothered to pick them up. "She was on the way," Roman murmured, as if talking to himself, as if justifying it to himself. "She came out from between the trees like a mad woman. That's why we hit her with the car. She fell into the lake, and there was nothing else we could do," Thiago exclaimed desperately. "Why jump into the lake to retrieve a body that was already lifeless?" All that Arlo said to Keita was, "What do you plan to do with all of this? Send it to the police?" At the absurdity of his question, Keita replied, "I am not in charge of the punishment of men. Justice will be served, but not by me." His silver eyes gleamed as he spoke. "Just keep in mind that now 2 souls are tied to your fate." As soon as they left the place, the 3 of them didn't say a word to each other until they reached the hotel. The following day, each took their flight back home. In the following months, Thiago turned himself in to the police as an accomplice in the cover-up of the hit and run. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. When the police interrogated Roman, he revealed that although they were all drunk at the time of the incident, it was Arlo who was driving the car and who suggested they continue the trip. Roman was facing 2 years in prison. No one knew of Arlo's whereabouts. He seemed to have moved and changed his name. The authorities did what they could to search for him. But since the victim had been someone suffering from a mental illness and had run away from her own home, and therefore had little family who could report her disappearance, except for a sister, they were content with having 2 guilty individuals in prison and letting the one who escaped go free. Months after all of this, in their respective cells, Roman and Thiago received a letter in a brown envelope. The letter consisted of a pencil-drawn illustration showing Arlo drowning in a lake of skulls. The lake was the only part painted in a deep red, like blood, the demon in the portrait. Denise Gray looked away from her reflection in the store window. The sight of that perfectly proportioned young body only served to remind her of the curse. As a young woman, she'd posed for an enigmatic artist who had painted her picture while spinning words that were at once wonderful and frightening. It hadn't been long after that she learned the reality of the painting and its associated curse. One day, she was accosted by a thief, and before she realized what was happening, he had run a dagger through her heart. She cringed, but when the thief pulled the knife out, there was no blood where she had been stabbed. A swift kick to the groin sent him running, but when she opened her now ruined blouse, she realized that she was unharmed, not even a scratch. Denise thought about it and realized that her situation was like a story her mother had told her, called The Painting of Dorian Gray. "Damn," she whispered as she scraped her knee on a large rock that she'd brushed against, only to look down and realize that her forever young body was still unharmed. She realized that she would have to return to the artist's studio. And if that painting was damaged, she would have to force the artist to find a way to lift the curse without killing her before her time. When she returned to confront the artist, she found him hanging in his studio, dead. Her search for the painting in his studio was in vain, and it was only after another attack that she realized the truth of the curse. The knife had pierced her heart. But again, she felt no pain after the knife had been pulled from her chest. She tracked the painting down to a gallery in a distant town, only to watch the painting destroyed by fire as the gallery burned to the ground, killing the hundreds of people inside. She'd spent many hours waiting for the death that never came. After that, she tried every means of killing herself, but to no avail. Finally, she felt a glimmer of hope as she learned of a book of paintings that had a copy of her painting in it. That book was rumored to be in this tiny library. She took a deep breath as she approached the tiny library. She knew she had to do something, or she would go insane from not being able to die. Denise had arrived just as Jessie had left the library and moved toward the tavern. An hour while the poor, pregnant librarian took lunch wouldn't make a lot of difference, she thought, as she sat down on a nearby bench. She smiled as a group of children ran by. One little brown-eyed girl stopped and smiled back, then ran to join her friends. "The book you want is here," Jessie said, "but you may be disappointed. The book is a manual for destroying demons." "I don't feel like a demon," Denise said. Jessie slid the leather hand-bound book toward Denise. "What happens if I open it?" Jessie shrugged. "I haven't read that far." Denise felt a tingling race up her arm as she pulled the book toward herself. What if she got sucked into the book when she opened it? She looked down at her ruined blouse. She'd neglected to change the blouse, even though she had another in her small travel bag. Throwing caution to the wind, she opened the book. Being stuck in the book would be no worse than not being able to kill herself. The first thing she saw was a horrible version of herself. Her hair was singed, and every injury she'd sustained in getting there had scarred over. When she could finally pull her eyes away from the picture, she began to read. The demon her painting had become had spoken from the painting and convinced the artist to hang himself. Then she had started the fire that destroyed the original painting, killing all the people there for the unveiling. Denise slammed the book closed. The pull of the woman in the painting was more than she could stand. "Are you affected as well?" Denise asked, only to be met by a blank stare from Jessie. A few moments later, her unborn child, kicking wildly, stirred Jessie back to life. "We have to destroy the book," Denise said. Jessie shook her head. "She will take us all with her." Denise slammed her hand down on the book before Jessie could open it. "That's exactly what she wants you to think. But trust me," Jessie's unborn baby kicked so hard that she gasped. "I can't help you. I'll take care of it," Denise said, taking the book and leaving the library. Denise counted herself lucky that the tiny library was on a small tropical island with an active volcano. It would only take her half a day to get to the volcano cone, light the book on fire, and drop it into the liquid lava below. She only hoped that would be enough. As she moved toward the volcano, the book and the demon it contained recognized her intent. "Hand over that book," the huge Polynesian man standing in her way said, his gun drawn. On some level, Denise knew that the man was under the influence of the demon. She ran around him and felt the bullet from his gun rip through the ruined blouse and on through her right shoulder. By the time she reached the trail at the edge of the volcano, she could feel the demon trying to stop her. Branches and thorns reached out for her, only to rip more holes in her ruined blouse as she ran toward the summit. Finally, she reached the edge of the cauldron and the bubbling lava below. "No!" The sound of the wind and the rush of the heat shouted as the edges of the book began to smoke. The book burst into flames as she tossed the book toward the lava. It hung suspended above the lava, flaming bigger and brighter, but without being consumed. Suddenly, she noticed that the young girl she'd seen before had caught up to her. "It's drawing power from your blouse." Denise shook her head. None of this made sense. The blouse had taken the brunt of the damage inflicted on her and was ragged and full of holes. "You have to destroy the blouse as well," the girl said, before racing away from the lip. At the bottom of the trail, she saw the other children blocking the way of the adults who were under the influence of the book. Denise turned to see flame explode from the book and realized that she had no choice. If destroying the blouse didn't work. She would have to offer herself to the volcano. But this glimmer of hope had given her a reason to live. She pulled the remains of that ruined blouse off and threw it down at the boiling lava below. The atmosphere around the book howled in rage as the blouse fluttered to the surface of the lava and then burst into flames. The book exploded, scattering burning ash over everything. Before Denise could react, the same young girl was pulling her away from the lip of the cauldron. She stumbled into the group and children, and then her world went black. Denise remembered that blouse as the one that the artist had insisted she wear while he worked on the painting. What happened after that was a blur until that book exploded over the cauldron. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes to the soft light of the sun coming in through the curtains of a cottage near the ocean. It was a dream, she thought, until she realized that she wasn't wearing the blouse anymore. The painting and the book had been destroyed, but she didn't know about the curse. She inspected her body and then wrapped a sheet around her till she could find some clothes. Denise opened the door and saw children playing in front of the cottage, then stepped onto the porch and noticed a thorny bush near the steps into the yard. She idly pricked her finger and gave a sigh of relief as she realized that the curse was gone when a tiny drop of blood formed on her finger. "The children told us how you saved us," Jessie said as she approached from the side yard. Denise shrugged. "I needed to be free of the curse," Jess smiled. "The children like having you around, and we are in the market for school teacher." Denise had never considered anything like this. She'd been so young when the nightmare started. She looked down. Her body was still young, and if the kids had trusted her, maybe she could try. It beats modeling, she thought, as she followed Jessie back toward the cottage. Cornflower blues. It always came at night. That night was no different in that respect. I had heard it lumbering around outside as the sun disappeared from the sky, the sound of scraping metal as it circled the house. I had always fought the urge to look directly at it, instead only catching glimpses of it in the shadows. If I focused, I could shuffle it to the back of my mind like a deck of cards. But those lonely hours, when night approached and my mind was no longer engaged by work or meaningless check-ins with the few friends I managed to keep, were the hardest. At first, the check-ins came daily, then weekly, then monthly, then whenever they had a free second to pity me via text. "Hey girl, you doing okay? Do you need anything?" I don't think any of them would have known what to do had I answered yes. I couldn't blame them though. Life goes on, for some people at least. But anyway, the difference in this particular night was that I had decided to allow my mind to go to that place. No shuffling this time. Instead, accepting the cards that were dealt. Sometime after my 5th or 6th glass of Pinot Noir, I turned my phone off, placed it on the end table next to a stack of unpaid bills, pushed the dirty clothes to one end of the couch, and sank into the other end. Alone. It had been 12 months to the day since I lost my sweet boy with the cornflower blue eyes. Cornflower Connie, as I called him. Parents should never have to bury their children. Todd was completely shattered. He left me this past June. I had dropped to a rail-thin 99 pounds, and he said he couldn't stand to see me hurt any longer. I tried everything: counseling, group, rehabilitation programs, but everyone grieves differently. I guess Todd had to grieve alone. At some point, I nodded off, waking only to an unsettling silence, quickly realizing the noise was gone. I wiped the drool from my chin, licked my cracked lips, and decided to check it out. With my body bladed to the window, I pulled the curtain to the side and saw it standing under the dim porch light. The back of my neck tingled, and my heart thumped in my chest, acting like my body's panic alarm. I would normally just do a quick look. Instead, for the first time, I stayed. I studied it. Its skin was the color of burnt charcoal, and its back curved like a question mark. It shifted under the light, revealing a Grinch-like face that scrunched even more as it smiled at me, like a mischievous feline. But there, above the unnerving grin, I saw them, those familiar eyes. My cornflower Connie had come home. All I had to do was focus on those eyes. Don't you want to be with me again, Mommy? Let me in, and you can hold me again, just like you used to. What was I supposed to do? Of course, I wanted to be with him again. It would surely be better than telling myself that the random white blob in the sky actually resembled a heart. A message from my Connie. I love you too. Yeah, you can convince yourself of almost anything if you believe it enough, and if you're sad enough, just like the cardinal that occasionally lands on my fence. Good morning, Connie. Thanks for the visit. I let him in. His long, rubbery fingers took me by the arm, led me upstairs, never breaking his gaze. Where are we going? I asked, barely a whisper, in what seemed like the first words I had spoken in days. To my room, Mommy. The door creaked open, and the lights came on, bringing the room back to life. I have no idea if I flipped the switch or not. It felt like I had floated up the staircase. The room was just as he left it. COONRD, colorfully stenciled on the blue wall above his big boy twin bed. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle sheets and comforter still ruffled from that night a little over a year ago when he stumbled into our room just before midnight. Mommy, my chest feels weird, he moaned. After a 104.1 fever, we rushed him to the hospital. My cornflower Connie would never come home again. His fingers rolled up my sleeve and led me to the bed. I pressed his Michelangelo stuffed animal to my face, inhaling deeply, hoping it still held Connie's scent. It didn't. The tears fell, and his grip tightened on my arm, leading me into the bed. He never let go of my arm. "Lay with me, Mommy." I climbed in, pulled the covers to my stomach, and rested my head on Connie's pillow. "I miss you so much, baby," I yelled through tears, pounding my one free fist on the mattress. "I'm here if you keep looking in my eyes." Just then, his eyes flickered, and as if I was watching a projection screen. I watched as we took in the afternoon show of the new Spider-Man movie last year. Connie's lap littered with buttery popcorn that missed his mouth, his icy stained lips framing his checkered smile. A flicker, a summer afternoon drive around the neighborhood, blasting random 90s songs. He loved the songs that I grew up on. We would do our absolute worst to sing along. "Keep looking at my eyes, Mommy. Just a little bit more until you can hold me again." His grip tightened some more. Another flicker, a lazy Sunday. Me sprawled out on the couch, my Connie's little body slowly rising and falling with my breathing as he naps on my chest. Another second, and I'm yours again. How could I say no? I did what he asked, just a little longer. The avalanche of warmth I felt was euphoric, as if my insides were swaddled in a heated blanket. It was the first semblance of comfort and peace that I hadn't felt since he was actually here with me. I did what he asked. Then I waited. That was 2 days ago, and I don't see my cornflower Connie anywhere. The comfort I had felt the other day dissipated in an instant. I've been patiently waiting, but now I wonder, did it lie? It's so dark here.